The Kremlin is discussing plans to expand Russia's invasion into NATO countries, and Western intelligence has evidence. German intelligence stated this suddenly. And the Institute for the Study of War from Washington writes directly that Russia is accelerating the phase of information and psychological preparation, phase 0, of its campaign to prepare for a future war. The Kremlin is creating conditions to justify and mobilize public support for any possible future Russian aggression against NATO. And as an example, analysts cite numerous statements from the Kremlin claiming that supposedly the United Kingdom, France, and Germany are preparing provocations against the Russian Federation. Most recently, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service stated that the United Kingdom is planning to organize an attack by a group of pro-Ukrainian Russians on a Ukrainian Navy ship or a foreign civilian vessel in a European port. And then Russia will be blamed for it. So in order to avoid such provocations, Russia must strike first. That's the kind of logic we're hearing now from the Foreign Intelligence Service and the Kremlin. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's break down this topic because there are a lot of different statements being made, but they all boil down to the fact that Russia has officially begun the first stage of its invasion of Europe. Before we start this episode, I want to remind you that every day on this YouTube channel, several news and analytical segments are released so that you can stay up to date with absolutely all the news. So I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, give it a like, and leave any comment you want under this video. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so by making any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support Alexei Pechi's YouTube channel. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you can give. The Kremlin is reportedly discussing a possible Russian invasion of NATO countries. Western intelligence agencies have proof of this. European Commissioner for Defense Andrius Kubilius said this in an interview with Vyvorocha. Here is his quote: "I trust the intelligence services, and the German intelligence claims that they have evidence that the Kremlin is discussing an attack on NATO." If they're discussing this, are they planning an attack? We don't know. But such signals must be taken extremely seriously. They really might be ready for war. We must also be ready for it and learn not only from the experience of Ukrainians, but also from the Russians. Then Kubilius admitted that the Russian army is bogged down in Ukraine, and of course no one in the Kremlin is satisfied with this. At the same time, he notes that Russia has adapted to modern warfare tactics and is producing a huge amount of weapons. The European Commissioner for Security also added that Ukraine is ready to help its Western allies prepare for a possible Russian invasion. But what happens next? Kubilius notes that it won't be enough to simply buy interceptor drones from the Ukrainians and learn how to operate them. Quote, "We need to learn flexibility from the Ukrainians." Look at their defense industry. Now it's based on startups, but they don't just produce equipment. They observe how it's used on the battlefield and constantly improve it. Companies that produce drones actually have their own drone battalions. It's impressive how Ukrainians freed themselves from bureaucratic structures in the face of the Russian attack. At the same time, former NATO Secretary General George Robertson urged the British to move away from peaceful thinking and start preparing for a major conflict. Lord Robertson, who led NATO from 1999 to 2003, emphasized that Britain must learn to act flexibly and take responsibility for its own security. Robertson also expressed concern about the alliances between Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Kim Jong-un, calling this combination something to be feared. Here's a quote from Robertson: "It doesn't seem like any of these leaders will change anytime soon. I have met with Vladimir Putin 9 times, and I can say that he cannot be trusted." The United Kingdom is already subjected to daily cyber attacks and information manipulation. Can it be considered a coincidence that Jaguar, Land Rover, Wade Strauss, and Harrods were attacked at the same time? We are already under fire. It's just not explosions, but cyber attacks. Now, Robertson's concerns are confirmed by the Russians themselves. The Washington Institute for the Study of War reports that Russia is speeding up Phase 0, information and psychological preparation, for a possible future conflict with NATO. Thus, analysts note that on October 6, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service claimed that the United Kingdom is planning to organize an attack by a group of pro-Ukrainian Russians on a Ukrainian Navy ship based in Britain, or any other foreign civilian vessel. On the European portal, and I quote, The Foreign Intelligence Service statement from October 6 follows similar false statements by the Foreign Intelligence Service regarding European countries such as Poland, Moldova, and Serbia. And in recent weeks, the Foreign Intelligence Service has started making such statements more frequently, which indicates a new pattern of coordinated actions. The analysts go on to emphasize that Russia is apparently preparing within the phase of creating physical and psychological conditions for military contingencies. At the same time, since the fall of 2025, Russian attacks have increased significantly. The most noticeable sign has been drone incursions into NATO airspace. Quote, "This model of organized activity suggests that Russia has entered the first phase of preparation, phase 0, to transition to a higher level of war than the one Russia is currently engaged in. For example, for a future NATO-Russia war. At the same time, the Institute for the Study of War does not currently assess whether the Kremlin has decided to engage in a more aggressive war or when it might do so." Quote, "Russia is implementing long-term plans that, according to the Institute for the Study of War, may be part of preparations for a future war between NATO and Russia, including restructuring, reorganizing Russian military districts on the western border, and building more bases near Finland. The Institute for the Study of War sees no evidence that Russia is currently preparing for an inevitable conflict with NATO. At the same time, it is noted that with such provocations, Russia seeks to sow fear among the European population and undermine NATO's resolve. And the wide range of types and locations of attacks is intended to create the impression that the threat of violence is spreading throughout all of Europe." And here's another quote from the Institute for the Study of War. "Russia seeks to use fear in Europe to gain concessions in its war against Ukraine and in a possible future war with NATO. Russia is also trying to push Europe to reduce or stop its current efforts to strengthen its defense. Because of fears that these efforts will provoke Russian attacks, the Kremlin is creating conditions to justify and mobilize public support for any possible future Russian aggression against NATO." I'll put an ellipsis here. Share your opinion and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Bye, everyone.